Hello folks, Jared here and welcome back to yet another video about mobile racing games. The other day a friend suggested to me that I should do a tier list, so today we'll be taking a look at some of the mobile racing games that I've played throughout the last few years to finally answer the question, which of these are actually worth your time? Over here you guys can see an assortment of various mobile racing games, and pretty much how this tier list is gonna work is whether I would recommend you to play the specific game that I'll be talking about. So let's actually start off with Forza Street. So this monstrosity, I actually made a video about it a few weeks ago, is going to be shutting down in like a month or two, but the biggest problem of Forza Street was always the gameplay. You had little to no input in the races and it was repetitive and it was not worth playing whatsoever. So for this tier list, Forza Street is setting the lowest benchmark possible and it's going into the oh god no tier. Next up, CSR 2. So when CSR 2 released in 2016, I was actually kind of biased against it, but now I gotta admit, CSR 2 is great. I really like the gameplay, it has a huge card list, and well, the microtransactions are there, but they aren't really that bad. So for me, CSR 2, I would have to say, is actually the GOAT. Next up we have Racing Rivals, and this is gonna be a little bit different, obviously because Racing Rivals shut down in 2019, but also because I couldn't actually separate this different versions of the game from each other. So I'm just gonna be ranking them, well, obviously, you know, 3.0, 6.0 and 7.0. So 3.0, clearly it's my favorite game I ever played and it's obviously the GOAT. As 6.0 goes, it wasn't really quite as good as the earlier versions, and for me 6.0, while still being really good, I wouldn't quite put it in the same tier as, you know, OG Racing Rivals. So I'm gonna put it in the yeah, you should play tier, even though you can't for like a couple of years now. But then again, you still have Racing Rivals World Tour, the 7.0 update, and honestly, I think I might be giving it too much credit, but I would still put it in the probably not tier. I mean, it wasn't nearly as bad as Forza Street, I would say, because you still had the pink slips and everything, but seeing how, you know, the game's been gone for years now, I don't think it matters that much. But speaking of Racing Rivals, we have a Racing Rivals clone. I actually debated making a whole video about my honest opinion on Rush Racing 2, and I mean, it's quite complicated because on one hand, Rush Racing 2 is nowhere as good as Racing Rivals was back in its prime, but on the other hand, Racing Rivals is gone, we'll never play it again, probably, so it's pretty much the closest thing we'll ever get to Racing Rivals, in my opinion. So ranking it, I don't know, I mean, the developers are super sketchy and the updates have been, you know, rarer and rarer, but for me, I don't know, I quit the game because I always thought that, you know, the plug could be pulled at any time, but thankfully 2 years later it hasn't. For me, Rush Racing 2 is gonna go in the maybe tier, and it completely depends how much you miss Racing Rivals. Rush Racing 2 is not a good game, but I'm still glad it's around. Next up, Top Drives. I'm probably more conflicted about Top Drives than even Rush Racing 2, because on one hand, I love Top Drives. It's one of the most fun car collecting games I've ever played, and it's super simple to access, and it's really easy to connect with it, you know, to continue building your garage. But on the other hand, the microtransactions have just become so aggressive that unfortunately after over 4 years of me playing Top Drives, I quit because it just wasn't worth the money I was throwing at it constantly. So for me, Top Drives, I would say, yeah, you should play it, but just please, for the love of God, do not become a gambling addict. Do not open packs, do not spend money on Top Drives. I mean, not, you know, an unhealthy amount anyway. Of course, you know, buying a pack here or there with gold is fine, but just please, for the love of God, don't let it get out of hand. Next up, we actually have a trio of games that I've kinda played, but not really. So the one I probably have the most experience with is Nitro Nation. And, well, I only made one video about it, and I never played it again. So for me, you know, I really don't want to talk out of my ass here, but Nitro Nation just doesn't seem like it's gonna have the staying power that a game like CSR2 or Racing Rivals had, so for me, it's gonna go in the maybe tier, but to be honest, I wouldn't be shocked if one of these days I heard that Nitro Nation was gonna be cancelled. Next up, Rebel Racing. So this is actually from the same developer team as Top Drives, and while I did wanna check it out initially, I saw, you know, the rapid rise in microtransactions in Top Drives, and I never bothered checking out Rebel Racing again. Plus, if I did record it, no one really would be watching it. So for me, it's also gonna go in the maybe tier. Just like Asphalt 9, I actually never played it, but I did hear good things about it, so I might look into that one later on and play it if you guys wanna see that video. Okay, next we have CSR Classics, which I think you can still play, but not the multiplayer aspect. That one was shut down like years ago. So CSR Classics, I played for quite a while, like I would say a couple of months, years ago, and unfortunately it seemed like one of the most grindy games I have ever played, and I just was never able to get into it. So should you play CSR Classics? In my opinion, probably not. And then we actually have probably the biggest like outsider of all these games. We have the original Hill Climb Racing. So this is gonna be something completely different. It's obviously not meant to be taken super seriously. It's the fucking driving version of Angry Birds or something, but Hill Climb Racing I played for a while as well, and if you're looking for a very simple, fun game, I think you should totally play this if you have like too much time or whatever. But I did see, actually, you know what, with the recent microtransactions and everything, I'm just gonna put it in maybe. It's yeah, I think that's a bit more fitting. And finally, we have Real Racing 3. So I remember playing this game years ago. I'm talking about when it released back in 2013 or 2014, and Real Racing 3 looked good, it played good, and it's still around all these years later, so obviously it's doing something right. So for me, Real Racing 3 is gonna go into, yeah, you should play it tier, but here's the tier list. You know, just looking at it, I know that there are probably some games that I could also add, like Need for Speed No Limits, but you know, we're not gonna talk about that right now. So yeah, I would say that I'm quite happy with how this tier list turned out, but I did actually want to make a different project where you guys would actually, you know, pick the best mobile racing games. So let me know in the comments down below if you guys want to see that. But until then, thank you guys so much for watching until the end. My name is Jerry, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.